said I'd answer it. Let me pause this story for 1 second because it is a new squirrel that you're asking me to talk about. The laws for squirrels in Florida. Squirrels are not legal pets in Florida. If you look up the law, if you Google it, the first line says, you may keep a squirrel as a legal pet. And everybody assumes that is the answer. But if you continue on, you will see that it says, if that squirrel has been bred in captivity and has USDA paperwork attached to it, and that law that allows for the breeding of captive squirrels was discontinued or dismantled or whatever you do to a law to make it no longer in effect more than the lifetime of a squirrel ago. So there are no breeding stock left in Florida. There is not one legal pet squirrel in Florida, and people do not understand that. If people need to find me for rehab, I am on the New York State DEC website for small mammals. I am also on Animal Help Now. You can reach out to me through my TikTok. My mods all have my cell number. It is given out like candy. It's written on every bathroom wall. You can find me anywhere. If TikTok allowed me, I would put it in the chat.
And again,
Animal Help Now is an app that is so important. It connects finders with rehabbers, and it does something else. It connects people who want to get involved with wildlife rehab with people who are willing to mentor, with people who are already licensed and experienced, willing to mentor. So that app is so important.
No matter how you look at it, wildlife is wildlife. It belongs in nature, and it's not a pet. That's why we call them in different names. So no matter how you're going to try to twist it around, wildlife belongs in the wild, a pet belongs at home. And when it comes to the stress that you're putting on wildlife rehabilitators, I'm just going to add on to that, KL, for a second. Mm-hmm. It's not just the daily stuff that they go through and the money situation and all of that. It's also the people that come and here and in other social media spread misinformation, bully and treat rehabbers and rescues in a terrible way. So they take that on top of all the other stuff that they're dealing with every day, the horrifics, the stress and everything. Burnout is a real thing.
Right. And
ultimately it harms the wildlife. At the end of the day, that's who's actually being harmed the most. Yeah. Because the less rehabbers, the less there are resources to care for them, the less they are cared for. The more rehabbers that are burnt out emotionally, they're not there.
Right. Yep. Again, I'm stressing over and over again, we need to move wildlife rehab across this country out of people's homes and put it into facilities. It is not fair to expect families to be exposed to zoonosis. It is not fair for rehabbers to be expected to be on 24/7. If I take a pinky squirrel, I am on 24/7 with that animal for the next 4 months.
And it's not fair to the animal too that the lines are blurred with public perception of whether they're pets or not.
Correct.
That's too
a great point. And it's not fair to the animal to have somebody who is perpetually exhausted caring for them.
Yeah.
I think that you guys also have to understand too, some people are very fortunate to have multiple rehabbers within their state. There's also states like Washington that do not.
Alabama.
Yeah.
And so I get a ton of phone calls. I would say probably on average 300 a year, asking me to take in wild animals to rehab because our local rehabs told them to kind of screw off and let nature take its course. So I think that what really has people have to understand too, is that I know that rehabilitation is a very specialized thing. And I know that you guys go through a lot with having to put animals down or having to deal with that. So does sanctuaries too. We do have to do the same thing and make those hard decisions too, and get animals that are coming to us massively neglected. Right. But, I think that education is just the main thing that's lacking, to be quite honest. I think that a lot of people don't understand, when someone calls to, like our local rehabs here, and they say, we found this baby deer, what do we do with it? And all they hear from multiple sources is leave it alone and hope that mom comes back. And if mom doesn't come back, then, unfortunately nature's going to take its course. That human heart can't understand and accept that from that happening. And I think that what society is honestly lacking in all of it is just the educational part. And that's kind of like where we come in. That's what we teach people, is about education and how, if you find a possum on the side of the road, or, check its pouch, take the babies to a rehabilitator so they can re-release them because we need them here, yada, 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 and we educate people about that. And it's amazing to me of how many people just don't know. So I think that it's hard when we come to people and to say, you're trying to be a good Samaritan and you're doing more harm than good. They honestly they don't know that. And because a Google search is just so convenient and quick, and and it's so just right there, people now feel like they can do it on their own, but they don't understand the repercussions. And I think that it's just kind of a hard thing to put that on people's ignorance. They don't know, right? They don't know. And I don't think that we have enough resources.
There's a difference between not knowing and being told repeatedly to go to a rehab, to find a rehab. There's a difference between that. There's a big difference. And a lot of people make that choice even when they're told about the resources that they have, even when they're giving the resources that they have, because it's so cute and they're going to get so many more followers and they can get more money. And that's how it ends up with a squirrel and a raccoon that die, and the wildlife rehabilitators are being blamed for it, which is another, added stress.
I think that may be what's happening in this situation, but I don't think that that's overly common. And the only reason that I say that is because, I will give resources of the 10 rehabilitators here in Washington, and those people will call me back at the end of the day and say, I called all 10 of them and they told me to screw off. And I'm not saying that that's you guys. I'm saying that's Washington. They're a little snobby up here when it comes to rehabilitation. So I just want to let people know that, there are really, really good rehabilitators out there that literally are working 80 to 120 hours a week. And they're working their tail off, and they don't get enough credit for what they do. But also know that there are people that, even from Fish and Wildlife, even up here in Washington, a lot of times they'll call Fish and Wildlife for this help of things happening, and Fish and Wildlife will send them a video of how to humanely euthanize it up here, personally. And a lot of people can't do that.
That's another thing, that there's not enough nationwide regulations that are consistent between states, and that's
there is no consistency between states in terms of licenses, procedures, protocols. There is no consistency. This is a state-by-state issue,
and that is an issue, and hopefully we'll be able to correct that in the future.
So when you guys got may I ask, when you guys got your rehabilitation license, you didn't have to go through the 1,000 hours of volunteer hours and the courses and the approval and the permitting process? That's not your guys' standard where you're from, or?
State, we have to, now it was different when I got licensed. In New York State, we had to take a test that was in person. It was a 100-question test. We had an hour for the 100 questions. We had to have a mentor backing us and a cooperating vet, and sit for an interview in person.
That's the same in Washington.
Okay.
And we have to have 1,000 hours with that mentor, volunteer hours.
Nope, no volunteer hours, no mentor hours whatsoever. During COVID, the test went online. So it is now, in essence, an open book test. They have dropped the requirement for a cooperating vet and a mentor. You have to,
and it's different in every state also.
you have to pass this written test, which is now open book, in essence, and you have 3 hours when you had 1 hour in person. And there is no requirement that you have ever been shown how to properly handle, restrain, medicate any of the animals that you are going to be working with. Now, I've told this story before about different species coming into my area. So, and over the time that I've been rehabbing, different species have moved into my area, and different species or different diseases have moved in. So for the majority of the time that I was rehabbing, never saw a groundhog. I am on the South Shore, mid-Nassau County, Long Island. Nope. In New York State, wildlife rehab licenses are free. We do not have to pay for them. But so now I'm in mid-Nassau, South Shore. And I had gotten a call for raccoons in a stairwell at Jamaica Hospital. This is years ago. I went to pick them up, and I was bringing them to the local licensed rabies vector person. And I called her up to say I was on my way with these baby raccoons. And she said, great, I just got a groundhog. Want it? Because I do squirrels. Groundhogs are squirrels. She does raccoons. Great trade. I said, yeah, sure. I had never taken care of a groundhog before. Never, ever. Now, the way I introduce people that I mentor is with healthy, older orphans. I like 4 weeks, 4.5 weeks. Eyes are gonna open, but they haven't yet. And they are substantial to hold. They already know how to eat from a syringe and a nipple, and let them raise from there. Because when they start out with eyes closed babies and they open their eyes with their caregiver, they stay calmer longer. And it is just a better transition. And then I work them with younger and younger babies and older babies that are harder to handle and potentially more dangerous. But I'm working with squirrels so long, I can look at a squirrel and know what it's going to do in 10 minutes. I think I watch them move. They are predictable to me. Opossums, predictable to me. I had no clue what this groundhog was going to do. And so she takes the raccoons out of my carrier. I said, I have another carrier in my car. This is a raccoon carrier. I'm going to go get my carrier. We could take the groundhog out of your carrier, put it in mine, so I don't have to bother coming back here later to return the carrier. She said, it's not my carrier, but if you want to take him out, you can. And I look in the door of her carrier, and this groundhog had to be about 10 pounds. It's the biggest groundhog I've ever seen. And it looked at me, and as it turned, it was sideways across, it was in profile across the back, and it turned its head, and it showed its teeth. Now, I've been bitten by squirrels so many times, but when this groundhog showed its teeth to me, its top centrals were literally as big as my thumbnails. And those are guillotines. And I have no clue how this animal is going to move. And I talk a lot about my inner circle of friends. There are 6 of us. And I looked at that groundhog. Well, ego got to me. I already said I would take it. I'm not going to tell her no. Not going to say I'm not going to back out on my commitment to this rehabber. So I took the carrier and left. And I get into my car, still in her driveway, and I write away in my chat, anybody want a groundhog? I talk about, the characters of each of my friends. The criticalist, who only does one baby squirrel at a time with direction, didn't say a word. The transporter didn't say a word. My friend who takes the hot pink babies, baby or adult? Adult? No, thank you. Gina, actually, there were only 5 of us at the time. Gina was not in this group. Not yet. But the criticalist, the other squirrel criticalist, said, I'll take it. Thank God. Drove from East Meadow to Lindenhurst as fast as I could. And I walk into her house with the carrier, and she says, let's put it in my carrier. I said, you want to? Go ahead. And she looks in the carrier, and the groundhog turns and looks at her with its giant centrals, and she said, oh, maybe we'll leave it in your carrier. I said, not my carrier. It's not so-and-so's carrier. The carrier came from the park. And she said to me, you know, I have somebody coming from Evelyn Alexander, which is a major wildlife hospital out east on Long Island in the Hamptons. She said, I have somebody coming from Evelyn Alexander. They have experience with groundhogs. I think I'm going to send it there. And off the groundhog went. Because I knew enough to know that I did not have the experience to handle that animal safely. If it's not safe for me, it's not safe for that animal. And so I made sure it got to some place where the people had the proper experience and could handle it safely. It is so negligent of New York State to allow people to be licensed without ever having experience handling an animal. Yeah. And after that, I said, if anybody gets baby groundhogs, I want them because I need to learn. I'm going to get adults. I need to learn babies. And I have since learned and do take groundhogs regularly now. But it is so dangerous.
Going back, because matter, you talked about education. I completely agree that education is part of a cornerstone of all of this, because I completely recognize that there are places where there are not resources, and there are well-intentioned people that really do want to help and really do care. I empathize with those people. I mean, I used to be one of them. I think education really does come into play with this, because the more someone is educated about the entire situation, about whatever animal that they're dealing with, they're then able to fully or have a better understanding of potential risks, impacts, and consequences. And I think that's really where all of this kind of went awry is, the education is lacking. So no matter, somebody can be so well-intentioned, and that's great. The more people who care, the better. But I don't think people fully understand or are even willing to understand the impacts and the risks that they are taking and the consequences. If they still want to take those risks, then that's on them. But I agree. It's, education, because there are places where there is no help, or like you said, you're getting so many calls and other facilities just kind of say, F off. Mm-hmm. What are they going to do? They want to help them. I think understanding the impact that they can have cannot just be positive, but can also end up in a negative way, can really go a long way, because then this doesn't happen where it's a negative trickle-down effect on other people. At the end of the day, everyone just kind of wants to care for the animal. No, I agree. It's education. I'm sure you see that a lot out there.
I do.
The problem is that when the education comes, but people refuse to accept that education, and this is what happened in this case. That not only did they refuse to accept the education that was given to them and the help that was offered to them, they are still trying to defend themselves, and they're still trying to defend and blame the wildlife rehabilitators community to something that they were responsible for, and that trickles down to that trickles down to the hatred that you're now getting, basically, as a community, and people. Instead of opening people to education, what happened here is it actually, and we've seen it in the chat throughout the evening today, is that the people are closed. They close themselves, and they they don't want to listen. They don't want to open their minds now.
No,
They're just in
I don't think
accusation. Hold
that's.
on, they're in this accusation mode right now.
I disagree with you.
I think that's half of it.
Been in the chat all evening.
No,
I think
I have. I just haven't joined in. I've had several people say you need to go this live, go this live. I've had about 20, 30 people send this live to me. Here's where I disagree with you. I don't think that necessarily that this is creating a bad outcome on the rehabilitation clinics. I think what happened is that you had somebody who had an animal illegally for 7 years, and now he's wondering why, after very broadcasting, showcasing this animal for so many years, that they came in all these years later and went to the extremes that they went to. I personally, as somebody who works with animal control and has been on warrants and has been on confiscations, have not seen it done to this extreme up here.
Do you understand the reason for the extreme?
There is no reason for Fish and Wildlife, or whatever you guys call it down there, to come in, take the animal, and not possibly even see if there's a sanctuary that can take an animal that's been in captivity for 7 years.
Okay.
Rabies vector risk.
Maybe for your raccoon, but here's the thing. I think
can you explain it to her, please?
Yes.
I know about rabies. I know about risks. I've been doing it for 25 years.
She's not wrong. They could have, and this is the one viable option, and we have not discussed
it's two outcomes.
They could have quarantined the squirrel, euthanized the raccoon, and if the raccoon tested negative, place that squirrel.
Thank you. There was more ways to do it. I understand raccoons are a much higher risk of rabies than a squirrel ever is. I understand how that works. I do not agree with how they handle the situation, but that's beside the point. The point is that they own the animal illegally. This is something that happens if you take an animal from the wild. It is an illegal thing for you to do, and Fish and Wildlife or any government agency has the authority to come in and euthanize the animal. That is just the sad reality. I've seen it here, even in sanctuaries, that people have done anonymous drop-offs. Fish and Wild comes, knocks on your door and says, "I hear you got an anonymous drop-off of a common snapper." They come in, they take it, they euthanize it. It's not just for Joe Smo down the street that has no permits. Even us who have permits still have to abide by those same laws and regulations. Again, I think it all comes down to education. The problem is that
they are now going and they're accusing wildlife rehabilitators for the outcome and the euthanasia of these animals. So their supporters are now going out and bullying wildlife rehabilitators, and that's a trickle effect that is happening here.
I haven't seen that. What did they say about rehabilitators being wrong? I would say that this falls more under the government and how they handle things.
No, because the rehabilitators are the ones that that call them out and talk to authorities about them. So it's all about the
regulations.
Rehabilitators, and the rehabilitators don't know what they're talking about. And it's vector schmector. I was actually watching a live today. It was unbelievable what was happening.
So
and yes,
can
so
I,
it is.
Can I just tell you, I've been personally attacked by a rehabilitator here. I have had a rehabilitator literally contact Fish and Wildlife and say that there's no legal reason why I should have a porcupine and that I'm pulling animals from the wild, and there's no legal reason why I should be able to have possums because I'm pulling them from the wild and I'm stealing them from the wild. And I've had to have Fish and Wildlife come out and actually see that I have legal paperwork for these animals that were, yes, taken out of the wild, and the government agencies turned them over to my facility several years later. Okay, they had these animals for a porcupine for 3 or 4 years. It's too habituated, it's too used to humans. Fish and Wildlife doesn't want to deal with it, and so animal control comes in, they take it, they turn it over to me. I let it live out the rest of its life in a natural environment and do the best that I can at our facilities. I'm trying to understand. I think that, like, for me, everything that I've gotten from all of this, what makes it really hard is that if rehabilitators are calling in and saying this guy shouldn't be on TikTok owning a squirrel, he took it from the wild, I'm trying to understand what does that get? What does that do? What does that help?
I don't know.
I don't think it was the
First
squirrel,
of all,
though. It was the raccoon.
no one knows that. No one knows. They say that they know who it was. I don't know. What I'm saying is that what they are saying is, what the fans of the squirrel and the raccoon and can't remember the names, but what they're saying about these people is that they are now basically trying to blame the wildlife rehabilitation people, that it's because of them that what happened to their squirrel and the raccoon, what happened was because of wildlife rehabilitators, because wildlife rehabilitators have contacted them. They told them about the risk. KL here was I think one of the first ones that warned him about it. So they're now trying to blame it all because they don't want to take responsibility for themselves. They're trying to basically take all that heat that is about what happened and blame it on wildlife rehabilitation community.
You know that.
So I'm sorry that you had a bad experience with one wildlife rehabilitator.
No, I'm not saying they're bad. I support them 100%. I couldn't do
Some of them are. Some of them are.
It doesn't reflect what we're talking about here.
But
you know that meme where everyone stands in a circle and points their fingers at the person next to them? I feel like that's kind of what was happening, and that's now trickled down to other people. And what you said about education, I think that goes both ways, where this situation, there ends up being fallout on rehabber side. There ends up being fallout on people who are well-intentioned, who are in rural communities and don't have the resources, because now they feel like they are being attacked personally. And that's not the goal. I know personally, I can't speak for everyone. When people are calling out that this shouldn't have happened, it's supposed to be a start for a conversation for that education. So they know potential risks and consequences. And I think a part of education comes with curiosity to learn and willingness to accept even more, whether you're right or you're wrong. I think that's the other half of that conversation, because people can be so well educated about something, but if they're not willing to learn more or accept more or listen to the other sides of the story, then they will become more isolated. They will not receive help that they need. They will feel they are attacked personally. And then this kind of happens where it's like everyone's standing in a circle pointing the finger at each other, when really, at the end of the day, it's misinformation being spread that's the culprit, and that's what ends up harming the wildlife.
People need to understand that everybody keeps bringing up of, why did they take the squirrel after 7 years? Why did they take the squirrel? They would have had the squirrel till the squirrel died if they didn't bring in the friggin' raccoon, which is rabies vector, and then took it out in public to Starbucks, and then was putting that all over social media. They were
told not to. They were told not to.
The squirrel was not the issue. The squirrel only had to die because they were allowed to interact. A non-rabies vector and a rabies vector were allowed to interact. So they're like, you know what? We're just going to test them both because the squirrel bit somebody.
Yeah, and it comes down also to what I was talking about before, the integrity of to be accountable. You have to be able to be accountable, and that is an integrity thing and a value thing. It's just basic values.
Yeah, I guess my whole thing is I feel like one blame being turned to another blame is just not necessarily fair.
We're not blaming.
I think we just
the goal isn't blame, but I see how it can be seen that way. That's not the goal. Ultimately, it's just supposed to open up this conversation so other people can hear and learn how they can be better.
Right. No, I agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that I feel like, it would have just been a whole better situation if they would have come in, they would have taken the animals, like you said, done the raccoon first, see if that has rabies, then go from there. The squirrel can go to a new sanctuary that's licensed, and take it from there. I also think that them coming in and being held accountable and just saying, you know what, you owned an exotic animal that you took out of the wild and you can't do that. And this is the consequence for that. And just leaving it at that. would have been a lot better, but it's just been kind of a like make it up as we go kind of thing. Like I've heard so many different stories from so many different authorities, like who are in the line of this, not just Joe Smo, but actual, from the horse's mouth. And it's the stories are constantly changing to cover up tracks, and I just feel like honesty is just so key.
And that is the issue. That is the issue. I was talking about it before. It's a matter of trust and honesty, integrity, values, and
in the end, she just wrote, if there's no rabies in this country, this wouldn't be an issue. But there is rabies in this country, and I would beg to differ and say if they didn't take in an animal they're not allowed to have, this wouldn't be an issue.
That's true. That is absolutely true. Yeah. I think the reason why we came here today, and why I did the live before, why you're here, why Misfits is here, we're all here because we want to look at it and see what we can learn from this, how we can move forward better and learn from it. Not blaming, not creating any drama. We're not for that drama. We're here to really look at what can we learn from this situation so that we can help prevent this from happening again. That's the goal of this panel. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
Well, I think that a lot of it has to do with education. I think a lot of it has to do with, I know that rehabilitators and sanctuaries, myself included in this topic, but we all get really, really tired. And I feel that a lot of people who find injured animals need that time to have explanation and to really process their emotion, where we do it every day, or I've literally had to put down 4 animals in the last a month and a half, right? It's sucked. It's been tragic. And I'm putting down wolves. And anyway, it's so, but I've heard from a lot of people who have called me, just being able to take that time to simply say, you know what, I know that this is really hard. Let me tell you actually how this is helping the ecosystem by leaving that little robin there to fend for itself like it's supposed to, because they don't fly for X amount of days. And just taking that time to educate the people that I've had to educate just here in Skagit County, Whatcom, and et cetera, has helped them be able to go, okay, I get it. This is kind of the facts of life. Nature does need to take its course. And it's sad that I'm the only one here in Washington. I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about the rehabilitators here, literally blew them off and didn't educate them of why it is what it is. And I just, again, like you said, it all boils down to just taking that time and educating the public, because they really don't know. And the reason people don't understand this whole concept of what's happening is because they just see an animal that's been in someone's home for so long. They don't understand the risk. And like you're doing tonight is educating them of the risk that animal could bite a child and it could be carrying rabies. They wouldn't know. Right.
Yeah.
And so and you can't vaccinate them, because vaccinations aren't proven to work. They don't test them really on raccoons and stuff. So that's with USDA certifications. I don't have to vaccinate any of my exotic animals because the vaccinations aren't proven to work on those types of animals. Right. So they're not tested. So, anyway, I just think education is super, super important. And I hope that people learn a lesson from this, but at the same time, I don't think that they're going to, because all this money has been raised. And I don't see that. I see this people are just trying to fight for the little man and trying to justify something that's not justifiable.
Absolutely.
There's 2 sides that are equally valid. There are people who care and want to help and have so much empathy for wildlife and animals, and it might be misguided, and they might have their care based on misinformation, and it's still valid that they have empathy and they care and they want to help. That is entirely valid. The other side of that is the misinformation can still be misinformation and cause harm, and that is still equally valid. Neither one of those two things, takes out the other one. I think it's just an opportunity for people to, potentially learn and do better, because at the end of the day, then wildlife can benefit from it.
Absolutely. And I think also I said it this afternoon, and I'll repeat it here. We have to pay attention who we follow, who we support. It's not all the bells and the whistles are the ones that we really choose who to support. Look into them, make your own assessment. Coming back to integrity and trust and values. Why are they doing what they're doing? How are they doing what they're doing? What is it for? Who are they putting first? Are they putting the animals first, or are they putting social media first? And it's our responsibility to also educate people to follow the right people. Choose your teachers.
Okay, so I just want to interrupt for 1 second and talk about a couple of things that are being brought up in chat. First of all, licensed rehabbers do not need to be rabies vaccinated unless they want to work with rabies vector species, at least in New York. I am fully rabies vaccinated because I wanted to work with rabies vector species, and I also wanted to protect myself just in case. I did get bitten by a sick raccoon and had to complete the entire series. Since then, I get my titers checked every year so that I know, and if I were to have another exposure, I would still have to have a booster and then titers. That's number one. It is not required of DEC officers. It is not even required of veterinarians or vet techs that we be vaccinated. It is a personal choice. That's number one. Number two, this is hearsay, but I am hearing repeatedly that the animals were involved in some way with their OnlyFans page. And that is why the house was ransacked in such a way. And that's why they were questioned about cameras streaming everywhere, because of that situation. I know they very strongly pushed their OnlyFans platform. So, I did not follow them. I unfollowed them very, very early on because I disagreed with so much of what he was doing and the way they were presenting their animals. However, there is way more to this story that is not coming out about the involvement of these animals. And yeah, he admitted the squirrel made his own. So there was involvement of the animals in the OnlyFans page. That is what
that's illegal.
I never looked. I don't want to look.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of people, and I don't even know if you guys know this, but the USDA is now regulating exotic animals being displayed on social media. So if you are displaying exotic animals on social media, you have to have your USDA Class C exhibitor's permit.
I've already applied for one. I am well.
But they don't. People don't know that. So
That's a good thing to know, and I'm glad they did that.
Him not having his Class C exhibitor's permit and showing a squirrel, whether it fan only or whether it is just on social media, because it is considered an exotic animal, to display it, you have to have that license and that classification. And that is something new that they are coming out with right now, because I'm not open to the public. And so I was talking to my USDA rep about it. She goes, well, do you show your animals on social media? And I said, yeah, we do fundraising and education and yada, 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 and show our new rescues coming in, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, then you have to have it now because we're now regulating social media. So that also is another thing that he did not have. And you can't do it. And if you have birds now too, macaws, cockatoos, that's also going to be regulated because now the USDA is regulating birds. So there's a couple no-nos on a couple different parts, taking an animal from the wild and exhibiting without the proper licensing. Parrot owners do not need it. Only if you are there, you have to have a certain amount of birds on hand for it to qualify you to need your exhibitor's permit. So you'd have to look into that. I don't know the exact number. I want to say it's like 25 birds.
It's obvious that they loved the animals. Again, we do have compassion, and it's clear that they're grieving and they love those animals and they're hurting. We need not forget that and have that compassion and empathy for them with that, and maybe they need to process themselves what will happen. And with time, they will come to accept their part in what happened. There's a process for them too. They're probably quite in shock and processing everything, but they did love these animals. They just didn't love them the way that they were ought to be loved.
Okay, does anybody have any final questions? Because it is getting late here and I have things that I have to take care of, and I've been sick with the flu. I do want to get a little bit of rest. So,
way past my bedtime.
Anybody's
He doesn't know what don't we know?
yes, Sam, I agree. Personally, I agree. Kim Darlington, thank you. And thank you, wait a second, Diva, I appreciate that. I think this was a very important live, and maybe we could do this again this week. I'm going to send notes out to everybody who's been involved, and maybe we could put this panel together again another night. And I do not, anybody who's recording any of this, feel free to repost it. As long as you repost it, I know you can't repost 4 hours, but I'd like the clips left intact. I don't want them like pieces edited out in the middle. I want, again, it's my preference. You guys can do whatever you want, but I would like them, to follow the way they evolve naturally.
With integrity.
Yes.
Yeah. So apparently, Darlene here is saying that people are threatening the lady that reported them. Are they 100? And again, are they 100% sure that it was her and only her?
I have no clue.
We jump into conclusions so easily, and we can ruin a life. Again, we need to think about people's mental health. We can talk about that another day.
I can tell you it probably wasn't one person.
Probably
just one
not.
person. Because working with animal control, there is a certain amount that they have to get before it actually raises that red flag for them to investigate.
And because it was all over social media, they probably saw it themselves. So now there's this one person that is, God knows, we know how emotionally triggered, people can get on social media. And she's going to, I hope she has the strength to withhold what's coming her way. If anyone knows who that is, please send her my way that we can help her.
Oh, it's posted all over social media, her picture and everything. You'll find her. Okay. It's pretty public, and to be quite honest, like there is no reason to send anybody any kind of extremes like that. It's really sad to me. It's really sad to me. A genuine, somebody came in with concern that somebody was owning an animal out of the wild. They reached out to somebody, and government authorities took matters into their own hands because for a reason, because something that was being done illegally, and now you're holding somebody accountable that was a concerned citizen. That's not fair.
This is a public health risk.
Absolutely. And nothing warrants this kind of behavior, period. Carol, thank you so much for this discussion tonight. Very important, very informative.
Thank you all.
Thank you for the mods, the amazing mods that did such a great job.
My mods are absolutely amazing. I appreciate everybody for being here. Lana, I agree that this was not handled properly at all. I have said that from the beginning, but if they weren't doing anything wrong, there would not have been anything to handle wrong.
Yeah.
Diva, thank you. Nona, thank you. Kayla, thank you. Misfits, thank you. Yes, 2 lives were lost needlessly. Absolutely. Penny, me too.
Yeah, I think a lot of us kind of agree with you, kind of, Penny.
Yeah.
No, I'm getting all mixed up here. But thank you for everyone also who contributed to this conversation. Uncomfortable conversations.
Repost this.
Uncomfortable conversations like this is what makes us stronger and better and more united. So, thank you.
Hold on 1 second. Somebody screenshot this when I post it. Okay.
Nona, you managed to go a whole live without one joke? Or did I miss it?
Hold on.
No, I think she went the whole live.
Yeah, I don't know that there was a joke there.
How impressive.
Everyone's saying thank you, but thank you to everyone in chat who is willing to come here and have that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Kayla, thank you. Okay, yeah. Do we want to wrap up with the Nona joke? Nona, do you have anything prepared?
That's perfect.
Okay, so your mom. The way people look or choose to look is not up for discussion here. My hair is gray. I'd make it blonde. That's if somebody's tattooed. I happen to love tattoos. I don't have any. I love them. That's a different question, and that would have to be answered in a 501c3.
Actually, can I bring something up really quick for all the people who are on here? If you are donating to a 501c3 nonprofit organization, there are a few things that you really do genuinely need to check. When you see a GoFundMe account that is from one person to another, please note that you can actually select the nonprofit directly to actually have it sent a check directly to them so nothing is taken out of it. So all of my GoFundMes that we have for our animals actually say that we are a certified 501c3 charity and that the contributions are actually going to our charitable account. The same thing with PayPal. It has a little blue ribbon that says that they're a 501c3 and that the money is going to the charitable account. Please know that if you're sending to a charity and it's not like verified by that program itself that you're sending the money through, you should question that. You also should look up the charity status of that organization before donating to that organization. So that will save you guys some pain, because sometimes we donate to people and we do the tax write-off and they say we can't accept this, and then you're kind of screwed because you didn't donate to a proper nonprofit. So when I see a GoFundMe that has 190 some thousand dollars in it, and it's going from one person to another, and the charity says that it's going to the charity listed in the description, but it's not listed in the GoFundMe as the charity itself, that's concerning for me as a donator to causes.
Right.
So just be really cautious of who you donate to.
You can always look them up on the IRS.
990s for a 501c3 must be posted online annually. Like my 501c3 is brand new, so I don't have 990s.
You'll have soon.
But that is one thing. Like, so I have my link tree. I have multiple ways to donate. Because I'm still operating out of my house as an independent rehabber, and I'm very transparent about this, you can donate to my 501c3. That is through DonorBox. That is like a GoFundMe type of link for 501c3s because they take a smaller percentage of the money. Any platform you donate through is going to take a cut of the money, but DonorBox, because they only work with 501c3s, takes a smaller cut. If you donate to my 501c3, it must be used for that specific mission. So I have a link that says building fund. I can't use that to feed animals because I've collected it for a building fund. That must go for the building fund. If you say you're using the funds that you're raising for something, you must use it for something for that something. Now, I have my personal Venmo, PayPal, Cash App up there because I am still rehabbing out of my house. And I want to leave all of the money going into the 501c3 to purchase a building. But I still need to fund the work that I do here. So when I get donations that way, it is going to my formula, my meds, my food, all of the things that I do here. And I'm very transparent about telling people that if you're donating to me directly, it is still going to animal care. But it is going to what I'm doing in my home at the moment.
Yeah, and just so you know, so you might want to look into it. Zeffy is 100% free, and it's an amazing platform. Just so you know, it's better than DonorBox.
I'm sorry?
It's Zeffy, Zeffy. They do not take 1% of your thing. You can set up multiple campaigns, so you can have your building fund, and you can have just an animal care fund, so whichever one someone wants to donate to. And it's 100% free.
Thank you.
So any nonprofit, I've just started using them 6 weeks ago, and it's been the best thing I've ever done. They don't take a dime. So
wow. Okay. Thank you very much for letting me know that.
How many of us screenshot?
I just took one. I got one.
You too. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, if it's allocated, then it does, like she's saying, has to go to that specific cause. So like when someone says like care of this, then we have to allocate those funds to where you say they have to go. Yeah. But if you're just donating to the cause, then we can use that for our everyday expenses, which is actually more beneficial for us because it's going to ultimately always go to the animals. So it's really, that's a nice thing. But I was concerned when I looked up the GoFundMe and I saw that it was somebody throwing a GoFundMe for another person as an individual and not as a charity or as an organization. Honestly, all of that money that comes in, because it didn't go to the nonprofit, don't have to be allocated. He can use it to go buy a car if he wanted to. And so that's concerning to me. I'm not saying he's going to do that. I'm just saying if it's not running through the charity, then that's...
There are too many red lights there. I'll be honest. There are a lot of red lights there, and I believe in my heart that trust is the number one issue of integrity and of, if you want support, you need to be trust and you need to be open and transparent with what you do. Yep. They lost trust of a lot of people.
If they're collecting it for legal fees and they have a 501c3, which they do, and they are now receiving their legal fees pro bono, they cannot reallocate those funds. I believe they must return them.
No, so it's not. It says that it's going to the animal care on their GoFundMe. So it says that it'll be going to the animal care to take care of the farm animals in which they currently have. Okay. But ultimately, I think when he was talking out loud on his lives, that's where everyone's getting that it was going to legal fees, because he said, we need to fight this. We don't have the money to fight this. So I think that that's kind of where everyone's getting that. But
fortunately, that conflicting information is a huge problem for him, because that's like a verbal contract versus a written contract. They have equal weight within the law.
yeah, nonprofit's a really hard thing. And he's only been a nonprofit since 2023. You have to understand, us animal people, we look up other animal people because we want to make sure we have the facts before we say anything.
And it was the end of 23 too. It was like right look at the tail end too. He lost trust, I think, of a lot of people. And